What if burnout wasn't a problem to fix, but a signal guiding you toward deeper alignment with life? The Practice Podcast invites you to explore how aligning with your energy can transform your connection to yourself, your relationships, and your work. Through real stories, data-driven insights, and life-centered tools, each episode helps you tune into your body's signals and create life-affirming change from the inside out. Welcome to the Practice Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Practice Podcast. I'm Jessica Corbin, and we have what we are calling a Practice With edition today, where we're bringing on an expert in the field of somatics, energy medicine, and it is a very important person in my life, somebody that has profoundly affected me as an individual and also influenced my business tremendously, Alyssa Nobriga. So happy to be here. So Alyssa is a licensed therapist turned master coach, and I want to tell you right now, if you've ever been interested in becoming a coach, you have found your person. Alyssa is the most talented coach of coaches that I've ever experienced. And I'm not the only one that says that. She has coached thousands of people to be coaches, all while embodying, I would say, deep feminine leadership, deep healing, and modeling what it really also means to build a soul-centered business. So on today's episode, we're going to explore how Alyssa personally practices, and we'll see what else emerges along the way. So welcome, honey. Thank you for being here.
So happy to be here.
I think it's notable to talk about the way that we met, because it changed my life. That period of time changed my life
too.
We both were coming off of what I would probably call a sabbatical. Like we'd kind of completed a certain phase, and for me, I was just on a deep excavation. And so we were traveling in Thailand in a little island, and I was on a little back road, and I see Alyssa with another dear friend at a cafe, and it was like a moth to a flame. And we really haven't separated ever since. We've been in each other's worlds, and to have met you on the other side of the world, I truly believe that you were a part of the reason why I got the call to go. And then what's even odder is after that, Alyssa and I realized that we had a trip right after Thailand to go to Bali, and we booked places that were literally across the same rice field in another country. So it just felt like life really wanted us to connect.
Yeah.
So that during that time, let's go back. Can you talk to me about where you were at when we met and what it was that you were really exploring at that time?
Yeah, great questions. I'm so grateful that the universe brought you to me. And it's just, you've changed my life as well. And I'm just so grateful. You are one of the most special people that I've ever met. And I love that life couldn't help but bring us together. And it made it so obvious.
Yeah.
I made it so obvious. It was so good to not only meet in Thailand and then to be a rice field away in Bali and then to both live in California.
Right. And then be back in LA.
Yeah.
Wild.
So gifted, so privileged.
Yeah.
So at that time, I had just graduated with a master's degree in spiritual psychology. Yeah. And I had so many profound shifts internally, but I wanted to know that freedom. I wanted to live it, not just know it in my head, but feel it in my body and test and experiment with life to say, not only that happiness had nothing to do with money, but that I could find freedom independent of what life circumstance I was in. So I went on my own little soul sabbatical, you could call it, after graduating. And I was really inspired by the Eat, Pray, Love journey. I went to India for 6 weeks. And I stayed in an orphanage and was volunteering. I also in India did a conscious communication workshop living in a palace. And I got to see India really, my intention was to know duality and to know what was beyond form, what the happiness that was beyond being in the slums, so to speak, but also being in a palace, to know that it was not anything to do with the circumstance. And I got that lesson very deeply. And then went to Thailand to cleanse my gut from after being in India and just have a little bit of a break where we got to connect. And then Bali was all heart. And we just canceled the rest of our trip because I just loved Bali so much and wanted to be there longer. And actually wanted to live there and stay there. And went back to the States to get all of my things and put it in storage when I met my boyfriend at the time and now husband, who had 3 kids. And so then ended up not moving to Bali, but still has such a special place in my heart.
Mm-hmm. So it's so fun to hear you kind of recap it. What are we, 15 years later?
Yeah.
15 years later?
I'm not good with math, but at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that dichotomy that you experienced between, I guess,
seeing the
wealth
kids
and poverty, and know that freedom was available
either way.
Yeah.
Not as a concept, as a
Right.
lived experience. That was important for me. And to also see others without the stories in my mind. These kids had so much love and happiness and connection in the orphanage. And the family that I was staying with was very isolated and it felt very cold. There was less love in that home, even though there was more affluence. And so, and also just on this experiment of finding out, not only seeing it in others, but finding it out in myself. There was a deep level of freedom within me at the time, and I wanted to test it in the real world.
What I'm flashing on right now is that I too grew up in a family where these dichotomies existed. I had one set of grandparents that lived literally on the corner of Sunset and Beverly that had access to everything, fame, money. And then my other grandparents lived in a very modest home in North Hollywood. My grandfather was a stowaway from Trinidad and came to this country with nothing. My grandmother, the woman he married, was a very, very beautiful, powerful woman. But my grandfather, he didn't even know his family. So I grew up looking at the access and wealth and the humble beginnings, and the love that I felt actually on the humble side. It felt more real. It felt more. And so there is a really interesting thing that kind of plays out, I think, in my life where money has never been the motivator. It's never been the motivator. And you often talk about how money is an extension of consciousness. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, money reflects what's in our consciousness. So it's a mirror. So that's why people can not have a lot of money and feel totally free, whereas some people have a lot of wealth and yet they're living in scarcity. It's more about what's in your consciousness. And there's so much charge around money for people. And having worked as a psychotherapist, really understanding how much a lot of this roots back to childhood and that we inherit things from our family, our parents, based on what their programming was, unless we update it. So maybe dad taught us that money is freedom, or mom taught us that money is safety and security. And really starting to look at what was the conditioning and programming that I learned from mom and dad, not what was told, but what was modeled, helps us see, well, is that actually true? And how do I reprogram and update and operate now in a way that feels more aligned rather than just buying into what I was told? So I always try to use life as a mirror to help me grow and evolve. And I find that that's a really powerful hack. So rather than feeling like, you know, in my own personal story also, my dad had a very humble upbringing and then took a huge risk in his company, started to do well when I was maybe when I was 6 or so. And I remember feeling like I was very connected to my family in my first home. And then we grew to a bigger home and I felt less connected. So I equated unconsciously that taking risk meant less connected. And so it's good to not just, to slow it down, to see what do I really believe money to be? Life will show us if we're not conscious of it. That's the beauty of the unconscious, is that it gets mirrored by how we perceive it, like an ink blot world. But seeing that, then we can investigate what's actually true from a more conscious state, really sitting in silence and finding out, can I absolutely know that having more money means disconnected? and it starts to unravel. And then we get tested in life to find out what's actually true. And we know that in a deep integrated way. Not just head knowing or heart knowing, but really living that from the gut.
And I'm actually, as you put up that mirror for me, there was some sort of like, I think that money can create disconnection. Just the same. Like I trust almost sometimes people that maybe don't have as much on first glance, because then they're more honest. Like there's those weird setups in there that can exist.
Yeah. And it's such a rich topic because nobody talks about it. Yeah. So then there's a lot of unconscious that gets paired up around worth, around what I'm capable of, around rich people, around poor people, all of the stories. But that's where I like to go in, where I then can investigate and find out, well, what's my truth and take my power back from it. Some of these things need a little bit more practice, a little bit more shining the light on it than others.
Because when we met, I experienced you as somebody that was willing to almost like let the world go.
Yeah. I was in my Phoebe phase.
Yeah. You were just so, it felt like committed to like the purity of consciousness and awakening consciousness. And it wasn't like you overtly relinquished the world, but at times it felt like you were willing.
Yeah. No, there was a deep surrender.
But then how I have known you to be, probably, I don't know when it really began, but this woman that deeply was dedicated to awakening turned into like a grade A business marketing badass. And I was like, wow. And now you have such a successful company, and the ripple effects of your influence are so real. First question is, when did you know that you not only were dedicated to awakening, but that you were a savvy business person? When did that? When
You're like, that? At what point did I not
because we
see
were
it?
meditating in an ashram, and then all of a sudden,
well, I've always had somewhat of a drive.
Okay,
and I really love growth, and there is a part of that feels, I just love discovering what I'm capable of. And there was a while where I was pushing that down, judging that as bad. And some of that also just came out through spiritual seeking. So 20 meditation retreats, deeply committed. So it was the same energy of like, wow, this is important to me. Let me show up fully, but doing that with intensity around spirituality. Now that was futile because I was working hard at trying to become what I already was. And there was a moment, and that was the most important thing. And just tying it back to money, I saw my dad do well and he wasn't happy. And then I was like, oh, that's not what this is about. And I've always had a spiritual connection. And so I saw him and I'm like, that's not the way. And so really committed towards spiritual awakening. And that's when, in most of my life, really up until I was about 28. And I remember being in a silent retreat one point, and I'm just sitting there, and I knew myself as awareness, as this pristine, open, expansive awareness. And then there was everything else. There was life. And that felt very dualistic. And so I knew there was something I was missing in that it wasn't the end. And it was almost like I've used business as a spiritual path. And I do find that there's a divine design within desire, meaning as we say yes to something, usually the stronger the attachment or the obsession, the deeper the wound. And I knew that there was something calling me into business because I felt so above life, not in like an egoic way, just more of like untouched by life. And I wanted to sink my teeth more tantric to know myself as all of life. And that was more of the, instead of waking up, that was the waking down and out. And so I let myself, it felt very rebellious towards some of the Zen or Buddhist teachings, but I trust my own inner guidance and that desire. And so I started allowing that part of me that was ambitious and to channel it towards business. And actually it was way more fruitful to see the results of that ambition in business rather than spiritually. And it actually gave an outlet so that I didn't feel like I was trying to get somewhere in spiritual retreats, which can be very frustrating because it's more about just being. And so actually the silent retreats became a lot more enjoyable because there was just this more bliss of being and allowing the thoughts, not trying to get rid of them. Some very much schooled me, and other times it was just more enjoyable because I had an outlet for some of that drive. And I channeled, and it was almost like it pendulumed from being into doing. And I wanted to do from a place of being, but there were times where I took on bigger bites than I realized and have needed to integrate at different times where it was more than I realized. And I'm sure we're going to go into all of that. But formless and form, holding that dance of a foot in both worlds, knowing both. For me, without both, it doesn't feel aligned or true. I can't lean too hard in form, and I can't lean too hard in formless. That's just what feels right for me.
And then how do you know?
How do I know what?
When you're leaning too...
Well, life will show me through suffering. When I am hitting my head against the wall, it's a wake-up call. I don't think of it as bad. It's like, oh, that's feedback. I'm caught in an identity and trying to get somewhere other than the moment. I'm resisting the moment, and I will suffer. That's how friendly life is. It's feedback.
Life is so friendly, it'll make you suffer.
Yeah. To wake up. I'm fully grateful for that.
Can you bring people into your relationship with your body?
Yeah.
As a vessel for determining how to calibrate?
Do you want me to talk about how it shows up in entrepreneurship or?
I would because I think what feels the most resonant for me and many people, I think the idea of becoming enlightened as a soul path by which somebody sits under a banyan tree. I just think that isn't... People aren't endeavoring towards that as much anymore because it feels like we know...
It can be escapism.
Exactly.
Some people are more monastic.
Right.
That's not how I am.
Right.
For me, my deeper truth is about really living with a clear, open heart and mind in a very grounded modern day world. And it feels more like a PhD version. And part of why coming back from Bali felt like could have been an escape, although I love Bali. I will go back again and again. But it felt like it would have been an escape versus living in a modern day world without getting caught and lost in the dream and who I think I may be and where I think I'm going and all of the time-bound projections of future and past. So one way that somatic work and one practice that I use, and every few years I chew on a new practice and a new level of my own method, which I can speak to because it's how I navigate the world. Having tools within helps support outer results and just live open-minded, which is really my intention. And so some years it'll be about questioning the identity and thoughts. And I've had a practice of doing that for 6 years, every Sunday for 1 hour of just really coming into stillness and not getting so caught, especially as the more I'm involved in the world, the deeper my anchor needs to be. It's kind of like a ballast in a ship so that I feel more rooted, even if the winds of life move me away from, shake me a little bit. I can anchor in something deeper. But more recently, one of the things that I've been loving that is more somatic is what I call the paradox of transformation, where anything that I avoid, I actually create. And so sitting with and feeling into and breathing into the very thing that I'm avoiding helps me digest it and integrate it into my nervous system so that I'm not trying to control and manage life so that I don't feel a certain way. It's about stretching the capacity to be with the range of my human experience. And in that feels like more freedom. And so what that looks like as a practice right now is in the morning. I'm so funny. I created a podcast episode where I guide myself. I put it out for other people, but I was guiding myself through it was just 10 minutes of dropping into the body, feeling the very thing that I was running from and starting to presence it as a sensation in the body, not a story, and letting go of any images. It's okay if the mind is a little bit more active in the morning or in the beginning, and what you can do is just hold and say, how big is it? What color is it? So it can hold presence with where it is in the body. Usually it's the throat, the heart, and the gut. That's the core stuff. Usually the gut is more identity. And I will breathe into the very thing that I don't want to have happen, but as a sensation. And we know from neuroscientists, it only takes 90 seconds to feel something as pure energy before it moves through the body. And as I do that, it's almost like it's digesting, and then it's like a beach ball where you're holding that down in the pool so that you're not using all of your energy to avoid it. You have so much more innovation and creativity and can create the life that you want outside of managing and controlling, trying to avoid feeling failure, feeling not good enough, feeling whatever the feeling is. Because ironically, when we have the capacity to feel it fully with presence, it opens us to what it is we wanted. Mm-hmm. So like by feeling unworthiness, I feel worthy. By opening to feel stuck, I feel free. By feeling lonely, I feel connected. It's the game of opposites.
It feels like you're training your vessel for unconditionality.
That's right. And also noticing what already is unconditionally accepting,
right?
Even if the ego doesn't.
Right. And I think that's why, as I was preparing for our time together today, just doing some reflection, like I was a yogi before I met you, and the yogic maps were so supportive just around like sensing, feeling, mm-hmm. subtle energy, the subtle body, mm-hmm. Your psychic energy, all these things they discuss in that practice. There was something that was so elegant and effective about how you were communicating, though, about how to actually be with sensation. And but the yoga part gave me bhakti, it gave me devotion, it gave me steadfastness. And then I found you and then the tools that you were also relaying. So it's like all of that unconditionality and that bhakti, that devotion to self coupled with these tools, it lifted off, I think, lifetimes of trauma for me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember sitting in bars. I would sit in random bars, and this woman would look at me and just ask me a couple questions, and I would just be in tears, like in a public place. And that probably happens to you still all the time, because you just have like such a gift of creating safety, showing people how to create enough safety to feel and open the vessel so the thing can run its life cycle. So the mind isn't just looping and looping and looping.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you bring up safety, because that is really the foundation. And the more safe we feel, these parts of us don't defend because they feel seen. Mm-hmm. They feel like they can come up and out. And mm-hmm. sometimes I feel like people don't realize that the more safety you feel, the thoughts, the sensations, the feelings just want to, like little kids want to be hugged, mm-hmm. and then they are off playing again. Mm-hmm. It can be simple. We complicate it with our minds. There's two types of people, some that are more heady and they avoid by staying in the mind about it. And then there are those who wallow in the emotion. And those, it's unconscious, it's unintentional, but sometimes people will be like, if I go there, I'm never going to get out. And, have somebody that you trust that creates that safety, hold space to go there, because it does move through. Mm-hmm. Assuming there's no big T trauma, then, work with a trauma specialist. Mm-hmm. But really notice, like, am I avoiding? Am I indulging? And instead, can I just fully allow it to come up and out? Because then you don't have to hold it in your body so much. It doesn't create so much dis-ease or affect performance. And
that's what I want to talk about, because you are like a super ultra mega high performer. But I think a lot of people that self-identify as high performers don't necessarily fuck with somatics. Yeah. They don't have
Not yet.
That yet.
Yeah.
So can you just take a moment to make a case for why, if you want to be a high performer, that this type of somatic work is your path?
If you don't know how to be with fear, it's going to hold you back. It's going to affect your performance and your full potential. When you know how to regulate your nervous system and digest fear, then you're unstoppable. It's not getting in your way. I do know that trauma can motivate people into action, but then they burn out. It's short-lived. They're not happy. It's endless. It's like this hungry ghost. And there's a different operating system, a different way to orient, where it's more around values and alignment and playing a game, like what am I capable of, rather than running away from something, which actually will hurt your body, will hurt your relationships. And you could work a long time, but not necessarily be more productive. And so I think having something more well-rounded and holistic is more of what we all want, where we have rich relationships, our health is good, we're really optimizing at work or sharing our gifts in a way that feels like we're proud of. So if you don't know how to navigate your energy or integrate that fear into your nervous system and your trauma, life will present different opportunities until you do stop and face it. I think a lot of people are scared to slow down because they would be confronted with these things. And I'm just more proactive. I think you are too, to learn to be with whatever comes up so it can be digested and it doesn't just full stop take us out.
Yeah. At a certain point on the path, I don't have a choice but to keep up with the sensations that are moving through, because it's so uncomfortable to be in a body once you have grown certain awarenesses. It's like I don't even know how to repress anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish I did, because it's so consistently confronting.
Yeah.
Because we want to live these really big lives. Do you believe that life is expanding in equal and opposite directions? Like consciousness is always expanding in equal and opposite directions? Let's go meta real quick.
I don't know, right? Because that feels very meta. It's very heady, right? Nothing's created or destroyed. So I do know that life loves creativity and impulse and exploration and expansion. I do know that, but I'm also, I don't know.
The reason I ask that is because your life is getting bigger.
Yeah.
Right? Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's also part of one of my values is growth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, as the life gets bigger, it's like the pleasure gets bigger, but also the pain can get bigger. Is that something that you are experiencing? It's like the edges of growth, both the upper limits and,
Yeah, but I like to play at the edge because I know that as I expand that edge, my comfort zone gets bigger and I feel more free.
Yeah.
So I like playing. So it's
never bad news.
It's not bad news. I do have to follow and pay attention to my nervous system so that I don't, through ambition, override it.
Tell me more.
So like if I'm excited about my next level edge, right? I'm about to speak on stage, I think with 1,000 people, that with another audience, somebody else's audience, not mine. Yeah. The biggest group I've been in front of is 350 people, my audience. And so this is an expansion. This is something new. I'm flying to Amsterdam. I'm going to do this. And it's like it's an edge and it feels exciting. And there's fear in it. Yeah. So then I'm going to work with the fear while preparing for my talk. So it feels exciting for me because I know then I can hold greater capacity and 1,000 people will hold less weight.
Yeah. When you're growing like this, just energetically.
Yeah.
If you aren't playing big, does life feel too small?
It's a good inquiry. For me, it would be.
Yeah.
For me, it would be. Some people, the desire has to be bigger than the fear.
Yes.
Some people really do hold in their comfort zone and they don't question the fears. They don't meet the edges. And that's less the way that I choose to live. Because I feel like the more I say no to and I hide in that, it's like playing small isn't actually safe. And I think a lot of people think it might be, but I would look again.
Well, you've been working with me probably for a few years on that. I used to be really protective of my energy because I went through such deep burnout. And then I have the passion to create a company that cures that thing. But then it calls you forward in such integrity to be like, okay, well, I don't want to be a hypocrite here. So then I went really slow for a really long time. And then it feels like, no, it's like, it's grow time.
Yeah.
And I feel fortified enough to do it.
But that's also self-love by you listening to what you needed and not overriding and pushing based on an idea.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
So I honor you for that.
Yeah.
And some people, will have different phases of our life. Some people may have young kids or their parents are dying or they have other things going on. But, and so I would say just being true to ourselves in whatever form and phase.
On this podcast, we talk about our personal practice. Now, at Source, we have a very specific one. We are teaching energetic literacy, the ability to understand, manage, and renew your own energetic supply. Because it seems to be a hot commodity, this personal energy that we have. It's like it's needed for all the things that want to change and evolve. What does your personal practice look like? How are you keeping yourself fortified in the face of all of the growth?
Mm-hmm. I love the word the practice, because that practice is defined by us and it can evolve and change in different formats. I love movement. I've always been an athlete. I feel like when I'm in my body, I'm taking care of myself. And so, yeah, that's part of my practice, but also having a stillness. So a movement and a stillness practice. And those can change over time. I really do genuinely love meditation, although I will resist it a lot. I love it because and I don't know what the science is, but I feel like there's going to be more coming out soon around how much more regenerative it is than even sleeping, and how when we're tuned in, it's almost like we are connected with source, and that we can feel an energy supply that is unlimited. It's beyond the personal reserve. And that feels extremely nourishing, replenishing. That's been a big practice, going through waves over the last 30 years. And
when you meditate,
yeah.
Are you sitting in stillness? Are you listening? Are you being guided? What does that look like? I love
guided meditations.
Guided.
Yeah. Especially because the more I am in the world, the mind can get active. And the mind being active isn't the problem, but if I'm absorbed by the mind, then I can't observe it. And so part of my practice is observing the mind and using a guided meditation. I love non-dual meditations, specifically from Adyashanti. And there are different teachers and people will find different things, but also questioning who I am as a regular practice. Who am I taking myself to be? Who is the one that is meditating? The idea of that I'm a separate self, like all of that opens, and there's this deeper nourishment, which I also share with my husband as a core value, and we can drop into a deeper state of stillness. But that meditation is always, and stillness and movement will always be two of my core practices. But even the inquiry of questioning my thoughts for more of an active meditation, that helps me wake up beyond what's true, beyond what I'm telling myself about the moment right now. And I think nature can help do that a lot, where it's popping out of the narrative in my mind, what's actually here when I'm not thinking it into existence. And so those are two core practices. But even right now, I've been doing this more somatic practice where I'm digesting and presencing the very thing that I have avoided. And it takes courage, but it's like you were talking earlier, when you eat, it's almost like when you eat clean and then you have fast food, your body, it's similar to when you have practices to keep your heart and mind open. The contrast, it's not worth it. And even though there may be resistance sometimes, it feels like you can't not do it.
Yeah. For me, of course, the HRV components, but also doing the self-assessing of where am I disallowing my own energetic information is a big deal for me. Because I might have the willingness to feel, I might have the awareness of what I'm feeling, I might even be able to language it, but am I taking action from my knowing? That is really important. Then am I taking time to reflect? So those are my personal practices. You just brought up Adya.
Yeah.
And I know that you love him, and who wouldn't? He feels so transcendent. But I read something that he is no longer teaching.
He's retired.
Yeah. And I read something that he had experienced PTSD and back pain. And that was just one of the most humbling things that I read, because it's like that hope that like somebody hasn't figured out. Somebody hasn't figured out.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, the energetic practices that he could have been doing but also it isn't, in his view, it's also not bad.
Yeah. And, he comes from a Zen tradition, which is very strict. And I think sitting in meditation for a long time without moving the body really messed up his needs.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people get into spirituality as a way to opt out of the human experience.
Yeah.
And then I think we get a little bit more mature, and it's like, oh, this isn't about avoiding our human experience. It's actually about knowing how to go into it and surf the wave rather than get tumbled by the waves. And so there's no, some Ramana Maharishi, some really clear people. He died of cancer. Like it's just part of being, in our human experience. Yeah.
Where's your human at these days? Like, what's your human?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Because I always can, you're so generous with me. You give me access to both your human and your divinity so consistently. But we haven't, had a nice drop in lately. So why don't we do it in front of cameras? How's your human? Where are the edges lately?
Yeah. Well, some of my backstory of where my edges have played out and my patterns have played out. It has been team. And so I know how to scale. I know how to sell. I know how to deliver. I know how to serve. I got all that. The front end, the back end was more of an initiation for me. And, just holding that. So part of what I know about those patterns is that I, as a child, I made up the story that my parents needed me to help them. And so I became the parentified child to help my parents, to help make everyone happy and make sure everyone was okay. And I learned to abandon checking in with myself, my childlike experience, and then that started playing out with my team. It's interesting that it didn't play out with my marriage or kids, but it did play out with my team. And so I'm always running experiments. Like I love living that way to find out what's working and what's true. And so I've just recently hired a COO, which is working out really well. Good. I'm so grateful for her.
Yeah.
And I realized, though, that me staying and trying to make sure and manage my team and make sure everyone was okay wasn't working. So I ran an experiment instead of doing that, although it had me working more than I would have liked to in the back end. I like the front end. That gives me energy. I ran an experiment to say, what if I just start saying yes to all these opportunities that are coming my way? Yes to TV shows and to speaking and to play. And so I've been saying yes. And also I'm like a few days away from going on vacation with you. And so there's more that happens before taking 2 weeks off, and I have a launch and then a speaking gig. And so all these things. And I realized that in that experiment, life is a lot more full right now. What did come out of that experiment is that I know who can hold for it on my team and who needs me to hold it with them. And so that I can let myself receive the support of somebody fully owning it. And what has happened is if I didn't feel like somebody could do it better than I could, I jumped in. And in the past and I have a capacity. Like I was
going to say,
energy.
Not many people can do it better than you can do it.
But I realized, and this is, I think, part of the deeper healing around it, and where all of my frame of like the real work is inner, psychologically and spiritually in my eyes, and that life is a reflection of my business, a reflection of that. I realized that when I was receiving support, I felt guilty. And for different reasons, I felt guilty. And so I had to see that as a linchpin to be like, well, of course, then people weren't supporting me, or I didn't let them support me or receive that support. And so I felt bad for asking. I felt like I didn't want to be a burden. I felt like, well, I could just do it. And so I worked through some of that within my own psyche so that I could question it, feel uncomfortable with the guilt, actually let myself feel the guilt. And then I realized it's not that I'm a part of the nourishment. My dad does shamanic work, and we did a ceremony, and I was outside with my feet in the ground. And I remember this tree was vibrant and so alive, and it was apprenticing me. I know how wacky this sounds right now, but it was teaching me about the ecosystem, how if this tree, it felt like all of the other trees were giving nourishment to this one tree, and that was part of the agreement of the ecosystem, and that there wasn't one better tree. There wasn't that if I didn't let myself receive the nourishment, that if I sacrificed myself to serve others, that actually I wasn't serving others because I wasn't included in the nourishment.
100%.
And looking at nature and reflecting on that, I got to see it in a deeper way. And I started to look at this pattern of guilt, and really letting myself be more quote unquote selfish, even though it wasn't selfish. It was like, no, I'm included. I need to be included in the nourishment. And I knew that. I mean, come on, we all know, when you're in an airplane, put the mask on yourself before others. That was a conceptual knowing. And I kind of felt that in my heart, but I hadn't really been tested in my gut to really live that until I got confronted with my team around it. And I've been healing that. And I think that's also why I'm starting to have a really beautiful team for the first time in my life and let myself feel supported.
Yeah.
But that's how I hold some of these things. And yes, I'm working a little bit more right now, which is always going to be ebbs and flows. There's never going to be like work-life balance, I think, perfect. Some people get sick, others, it's not a fit. You know, maybe I say yes to like a growth phase, but to keep using my business as a mirror for how can I heal and evolve is part of what's most important to me. But yeah, that's my current edge. I feel like I would like to have a little bit more spaciousness, and I'm about to have that for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yes, this is.
Yeah.
Yeah. This influence though that you have garnered through the growth, because you're so prolific. Like, you're such a hard worker. I've never met anybody more dedicated. The reason why you're as good as you are is because you are so dedicated to learning. You're always picking up the next thing, or you're asking, like, what's really turning you on right now? Like, you're always ingesting more and letting it interface with like your knowing, and then growing your curriculums and how you're serving people, and your influence is growing. How does that feel?
It was one of my intentions. It was my intention.
Like, yeah, bitch, that's how manifestation works. Like, you intend and create.
Yeah. My intention was to use my life to give back, to serve. And I feel so proud that I'm doing that. It was one of my intentions to be able, I felt like the work that I'm doing in the world is a love letter back to serve humanity. And I want to help humanity heal and have the tools to navigate with more grace and to either heal or wake up, depending on what their intention is. And
what's the difference?
There's kind of like growing up, which is more psychological.
Okay.
And then there's waking up beyond who I think I am. Growing up and waking up is Ken Wilber's frame. I really like that. Yeah, there's the psychological. You can be totally psychologically clear and have your life very well organized, but you're still imprisoned by an identity.
Yeah.
And then you can be completely awake to your nature and have your life a mess. And so I genuinely like both, growing up and waking up. That feels more in alignment. But really being able to make an impact and serve feels like I'm so proud of that. I'm so grateful. And part of my intention is to always live it and embody it, and then to invite my coaches and my clients to live and embody it, and then be a beneficial presence, because we inspire and uplift each other. But it needs to be lived within us first. And so I feel excited about continuing to grow and use life as a classroom to expand and discover new edges. And I don't think I ever want that to end.
Yeah. Or you might just go like, Alyssa 2010 and just go straight awakening again.
I honestly, I have a sense that will be more. I have a sense in the next few years that'll be more.
It might be coming.
Yeah.
Oh, girl. There's so many places that I could explore with you. This next one has to do with feminine leadership and business legitimacy. Do you feel, would you call yourself somebody that leads in a feminine way?
Front facing, yes.
Back facing?
No.
Tell me more.
Yeah, I think one of my intentions is to have integration.
Yes.
So I knowing how to develop both the feminine and masculine ways of being, so that I can approach the moment based on what's being needed rather than my go-to. That feels like stepping into my full potential. And some of just to give, because I think there's a lot of different ideas about feminine and masculine, and you could say yin and yang, doing and being.
Absolutely.
Right? Like the feminine could be receptive, intuitive, listening to downloads and insights, whereas the masculine can be a lot more hyper-focused and stats and data and doubling down on what works. So both feel important, but we want to we want to develop both so that we can attune to what's needed. I love this quote from a quantum physicist. He says, it's not just do. It's not just be. It's doobie. I'm like,
good.
Yeah, that's the dance. That's sustainability.
Yeah.
Because if we're too gripping too tight and we're too focused, we don't have innovation. We don't have creativity, right? But if we're too relaxed or we know structure, nothing actually moves into real mastery and form. So I like the two. And I think that we need more models of more balance, but also more femininity, just given the imbalance.
Do you think that you being a woman has ever felt limiting in growing your business, or no?
Mm-mm.
Beautiful.
I've never worked in another organization, and I would question that belief because that belief would limit me, or I would let it limit me.
Right.
And so questioning it. I mean, I have a learning disability. I have ADHD and mild dyslexia. Although you could say there's a lot of different things that could limit me. And yet I think you can use something to limit you, or you can use something as a stepping stone.
You're such a fucking laser. You're a laser. You're a mirror and a laser. How are you defining success right now?
I'm at this place where I want to have more fun. And I feel like there was a period that I wanted to prove to myself that I could reach a level of success in how many students I was serving and things like that. And that felt important to prove, maybe to the part of me that had a learning disability and was like, I can do this and I can do it, proving my intelligence. And I was like, okay, sweetheart, that's sweet. You could do your thing. And I didn't try to heal that away because I did try to heal that away. And then I realized, no, this part just wants to, there was a part that also wanted to see what I was capable of, but there was some shadow in it. And I, rather than healing it, I just accepted it, and it felt less friction. And then there was a point where it was about getting out of the weeds and like having my team set up. And I feel now it's more, so it's like honoring the impact, honoring putting my body of work out in the world in a way that I'm truly proud of, that I know serves deeply. And now it's just about having fun and realigning with what love looks like in my leadership. How can I design my life to really just be sharing my gifts and letting myself be supported around the other things, giving other people a chance to have a job doing what they love and collaborating and connecting around that. So impact will always be a part of definition of success. Impacting, but that includes me and letting myself receive, but also having fun. And I mean, I think it's Maya Angelou's quote around doing what you love and loving how you do it. That just feels so clean. I don't think I could top that, and feels very aligned. But there'll be different phases. Sometimes I think I'll be in growth mode. Other times it's more about how can I collaborate with others for us to grow together in impact. But I think impact will always be a part of it. Connection, impact, growth, love, and truth are my top 5 values. And those are North Stars for me. So no matter what phase I'm in, if I'm aligned with those in how I move forward in my life, that's important. I also have my kids that are almost all out of the house now. So it's also just a different phase.
So what is this next phase?
Play.
Yeah.
Permission, play. But growth, there needs to be some growth in that and connection.
Yeah. What have you experimented with recently that you would like to share? Give me anything. Any new practice, person. You are always, weren't you just in Bali doing something dancing?
Yeah. Yeah, that did.
Is there anything that comes to mind that you're like, Jess, this is the next, this is, you got to check this out?
I mean, I think I shared it, which is, and it does not sound sexy. I will say let me share 2 things.
Okay.
One is like a true and stable thing in my life, which is personal responsibility, which doesn't sound sexy, but I promise it's the sexiest thing, and it'll enhance every relationship. If you don't blame, if it's like, really taking responsibility at work in any relationship. That's not new, but that is something I keep living by. And then the thing that I'm leaning into more is actually feeling the thing I avoid.
Right.
I promise it's like the very thing that I don't want to feel holds the key to what I deeply desire. And it's not something, I would just invite people to experiment with it. Because it's like, whoa. Because here's a grounded example. If somebody tells me they are afraid of being abandoned in a relationship, what they'll do is that they will abandon that part of them looking for love outside.
Totally.
And then life's a mirror, so they'll keep repeating and experiencing abandonment.
Right.
So part of it is about embracing the part of you that feels abandoned.
Yeah.
And ironically, you feel connected. Then you don't tolerate anything less than what you're giving yourself. And you naturally align with a partner that will meet you or elevate you. So, yeah, I think also just another edge thing that I'm doing is part of my work has been really deep and profound and somatic and emotional, but I'm wanting to play with my edges around how I facilitate, so it's a little bit more entertaining.
Oh,
because I'm
I remember
pitching.
when you were thinking about like, I said, "What are you up to?" And you said, "I'm going to become funny."
That didn't work.
And I was like, and it was like you were going to take comedy classes or something.
Well, no, I think I wanted to do stand-up.
Stand-up.
Yeah. Just because that scared me. So I'm like, greater freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that didn't last long. Yeah. But right now playing with, my friend and I are both somatic psychotherapists are going to pitch to YouTube a show where we're coaching and facilitating, or maybe even therapy. And I'm wanting, it's profound when you do the inner work, but it's also silent. And so now I'm like, I can just over communicate and read the body and play with different ways of facilitating that people get not just the concept, but also what does it look like real time.
Yeah.
So that was last week.
Who's your co-host?
Scott Lyons, Dr. Scott Lyons.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. He's going to be on the boat with us. That's right. He's fun. Yeah.
Well, sister, I appreciate you coming on and just allowing us in to understand a little bit more about your life and your personal practice. I'm so happy I get to share with people how you've influenced my life. You are such a rock. You're a rock star, you're a rock, you're a laser, you're a mirror. And it is a privilege to be just connected to you.
I love you so much.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining this episode of the Practice Podcast, Practicing with Alyssa Nobriga. We will see you guys next time.